Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior fighting for your right just to be an American. It is August 1st, first day in August, folks, where the year is really flying by. In the year of our Lord 2017, remember, we're a hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you, and I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. Both chat rooms are up at Blog Talk Radio and over at YouTube. I try to keep an eye on the Blog Talk Radio because I have to go back and forth, make sure that my YouTube feed is actually working, which it looks like it's actually working. Everything's, knock on wood, Lord willing, the creeks don't rise, thank God. Everything's working this morning. Earlier today I finished up a couple two videos. One about Charlie Gard. He's going to be... his funeral, I think, is today, and my heart still goes out, and my prayers go out to the parents of Charlie Gard, and just the catastrophe that socialized medicine is. And I keep telling folks, all you got to do is look over to Europe and the UK and see what rationing is. And Charlie Gard was a decision of rationing healthcare. And the problem with that, and you go over the video and get my full thoughts on this, but real quickly, the problem with the UK not allowing his parents to come over here to the United States, because if it would have worked, now they crowdfunded the trip over here, they were going to be put up over here, and all the expenses paid and everything, and if it would have worked, and even if it hadn't, but if it would have worked, that would have been an indictment on healthcare in the UK. If they would have allowed them to go, that would have been a severe indictment on the state of healthcare in the United Kingdom. And they just could not let that happen, folks. They couldn't. So they did everything in their power, the hospital and the courts, to prevent Charlie's parents from being his parents and doing the best for Charlie, irregardless of what some doctors say or what some government says. So go over and check out that video. And then I also put up another video. I put out one real quick this morning, because we're going to talk about this, the Antifa movement's Redneck Revolt. I was still laughing about it. So we'll get in and we'll talk about that, but there's two videos I just posted up at YouTube right after the show. I'm going to be posting them up over at VidMe, because VidMe is another place I post these short videos, and eventually I'll be able to post my longer videos over there once I get so far along on their platform and follow their rules. And I don't expect any special treatment, so I'm going to follow their rules, and then I'll be able to post all my videos over on VidMe also. So I'll have two places for that, just in case YouTube decides that they're just going to start canceling out conservative talk radio or talking shows or shows that talk about conservative issues. And the reason why I say talk radio, some people don't know this, but I simulcast my radio show. I first started this back in 2008 on Blog Talk Radio. I was actually on some servers for about 6 months that I was paying rent on. However, I wasn't able to afford any advertising to drive people over there. So someone told me about Blog Talk Radio. So in the spring of 2008, I got on Blog Talk Radio and haven't looked back. I've been broadcasting there except for a short stint when I was dispatching about 4 or 5 years. I took off because I just didn't have the time. That took up all my time. So when YouTube came along, and YouTube's been out for a long time, but I just never thought about getting over into that until I started following all these other folks on YouTube, and I thought, I'm missing an opportunity here. So I decided to try to simulcast and still do the Blog Talk Radio in podcast, because I still get, folks, I'm still averaging over 300 downloads a day over a 7-day period. Well over 300 downloads and live listens a day on Blog Talk Radio. So I'm not going to abandon that. I think that platform's still growing. Still a lot of people like to listen to podcasts because they're driving in their cars, which is fine. But I also see the advantages of actually being over on YouTube also, and simulcasting my YouTube show, or my Blog Talk show on YouTube. So, and that's why I have the computer set up I had, because I needed the extra computing power because of the double uploads for Blog Talk Radio and also for YouTube. I'll get this out here in a second. So I'm just glad I'm able to do this. I'm glad I'm on here. Forgot to put the link up. There it is. Link in the Blog Talk Radio for the YouTube chat. I don't get a lot of chat on there, and that's fine. My buddy Dave gets on there and makes suggestions, and sometimes I read them when I shouldn't, and other times I should read them. But I put the chat rooms mainly up for folks that want to get on there and chat with each other about what I'm saying. Eventually, when the show does grow and take off on YouTube and on Blog Talk Radio, I'm able to monetize the show. And can I say something real quick about monetization? But after I make this thing, when I monetize the show and able to hire call screeners, so I'd love to take phone calls. And if we start taking phone calls and start getting them, I am definitely going to go to an hour-and-a-half format every day. That way we can accommodate phone calls. But I need a call screener that we're going to have phone calls. They're going to be, there's going to talk to them about, look, we need to be short and concise. We're not going to carry on a conversation here because there's a lot of things I need to get through that I actually research and take the time to research, and I'd like to get through most of them on the show. But on the other hand, I still like to talk to people. But getting back to the monetization, way too many. I see way too many videos on YouTube where these guys and gals are puffing out their chests or whatever. The guys are puffing out their chests, the girls are grooming their hair and saying that we're purist, and I am not going to have any commercial advertisements on my show because I care all about you. And so they're relying totally on crowdfunding, whether it's through Patreon, which that's becoming dicey now for conservatives because it's run by liberals. YouTube's run by liberals, and so conservatives get very little money off of YouTube anymore. Some of them still make some decent dollars, but not like they used to. And I did hear one, and I'm not going to say who it was, last week sometime, late in the week or maybe even Saturday. I heard one complaining that he was making close to $1 million a month, and then he dropped down to only making a couple $100,000 a month, or $100,000 this month, or what? And it was like, okay, I understand you're used to that level, but to me, if you're making $100,000 a month, I don't know what you're complaining about unless you have a lot of employees. And this person, I don't think this person actually had a lot of employees, but that's theirs. But I hear a lot of these purists on YouTube, and honestly, I'd like to hear some people's thoughts on this. I do some advertising on the show here. I have a website that's an affiliate advertiser. I have affiliate links on my website, gearxs.com. Now, they sell a lot of novelties. They sell a lot of different type of things, camping gear, patio stuff, summer wear. They run the gambit, and it's quality stuff. And so they're an affiliate marketer of mine, and once I get big enough and people really start getting on there through the DanClementShow.com, and that's where you access this widget in order to support my show. It doesn't cost you anything. And matter of fact, if you just go over and check it out, now I don't get any money for you just checking it out, but if you go check it out and you see something you like, buy it, let me know what you think of the product. Maybe the stuff is totally garbage. I'm looking to see if I can buy some stuff on there. I haven't seen anything I'm really interested in yet, and I don't have a lot of disposable income, but they're one of my sponsors. And yes, I had to get approved by them. My content had to be approved by them. However, I also retain the right to my content. If they want to go their way because some anti-freedom group out there says, oh, you don't want to be associated with them, I would hope that they would dig a little bit deeper and look and see and listen and judge for themselves the content of my program, because I don't get into personal attacks and I don't tear people down personally. I actually deal and debate their ideas that I don't agree with. But folks, that's free speech. That's living... That's living the American dream, as it were, right? Freedom. And I have an article on here. Politican happened this weekend. I was watching videos. I didn't find a lot of live streaming, and the stuff I did find that was live streamed was such poor quality I couldn't watch it. I did find a couple videos, and the links are in the articles I have here. Anyway, Sink, Unger, and Ben Shapiro had a debate. And now Sink is supposed to be a lawyer, okay? And Ben Shapiro is a lawyer. They're both lawyers, but Sink, he seemed like he was confused half the time, and very condescending and that to the audience. But I just want to, where was I going with this? Well, anyway, you know, I have this on here, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. And again, very condescending on Sink's part, and I'm going to make some mentions about some things that are actually missing in this debate. But getting back to the advertisements and stuff like that, both of these programs actually advertise. Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's program, he definitely has corporate advertisers, and Young Turks definitely have corporate advertisers on their show. They make no bones about it. So this whole idea of some of these YouTubers out here that I'm a purist, that I just care about the people, and I want them to dig deep into their pockets, and maybe not so deep, but they want them to put out money for their program, and they're just swearing off corporate advertisers altogether. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I mean, I think about like Paul Harvey. You know, one of the most middle-of-the-road broadcasters in the history of radio had commercial advertisers on there, and some of them actually pulled their advertising because either they were looking for a different direction, or maybe they didn't agree with some of the stuff that Paul Harvey, his comments. And you know what? I never heard Paul Harvey complain about that. Same way with Rush Limbaugh. He lost some advertisers, but guess what? That actually made room for other advertisers. These advertisers pulled their stuff because of something Rush did or said, you know, whatever, and he didn't suffer from it because there was other advertisers that were trying to get their products out in front of his audience, you know. And that speaks, folks, that speaks volumes. It does. It speaks volumes to the shows on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, but I'm dealing with YouTube. It speaks volumes to the quality of the shows on YouTube, if you're going to have commercial advertisers or not. And some of these YouTubers who are talking about being purist and will never have commercial advertisers on their program probably couldn't get them anyway because of the profanity and the vulgarity on their show. The advertisers probably would not want to be, or most of them anyway, would not want to be associated with that. Now doesn't hold true in the gaming world, which I don't understand that, but it is what it is. So I'll be the first to say, if I get commercial advertisers on the show, I'm not going to mock them, and I'm not going to say I'm better than anybody else, and I'm not going to let anybody out there in Blog Talk Radio or YouTube condemn me because I want, you know, commercial sponsors for the show. You know, it's people got to make money, and honestly, I have some Patreon contributors, and I get a little bit of money from another anonymous source. I thank them for that, and I wish I could do this whole program with crowdsource funding, and maybe eventually someday I will. But I think it's also the American way to actually have advertisers, and I choose the advertisers, just like Paul Harvey, and I use him as my example. I'm going to choose advertisers that I believe in. I used to do We Wood Watches, an affiliate advertiser on here, and I bought my wife a watch. She loves it. It's fantastic, good quality stuff. They only do their network affiliations for so long, and if you don't get any sales through that, you know, then they pull it for a while. Now I can get back on it probably now and have them as an affiliate advertiser now again. And affiliate advertising is very effective, but you got to have an audience out there. And I know I'm rambling on here, but it just, you know, that was on my heart this morning, talking about everything that's going on here with Charlie Gard and the Antifa movement. It's just gone nuts out there. I'm still laughing about that, folks. I'm still laughing about those guys. All right, today's daily Bible reading comes from the book of Proverbs again, chapter 19, verses 8 through 11. Proverbs chapter 19, verses 8 through 11. This is in the New King James Version. He who gets wisdom loves his own soul. He who keeps understanding will find good. A false witness will not go unpunished, and he who speaks lies shall perish. Luxury is not fitting for a fool, much less for a servant to rule over princes. The discretion of a man makes him slow to anger, and his glory is to overlook a transgression. And I like to zero in on that. The luxury is not fitting for a fool, much less for a servant to rule over a prince or princes. The luxury is not fit for a fool. I see way too many YouTube videos out there that are geared around gaming, and these are very young men and women that are raking in a lot of dough, and the frivolous spending that they're doing is just it's unreal. Now, it's totally up to them. It's totally up to them how they want to spend their money, but I don't hear a single one of them talking about putting some money away and saving for the future. What happens if the gaming community on YouTube gets defunded? You know, these guys are buying, $1 million homes and driving, $100,000, or more cars like Lamborghinis as their everyday runaround car. They don't have the experience or the discipline in earning that money. They won't have the discipline or experience in spending that money. It's just that's the case. And in our society, things are getting upside down that way. Today's quote meal comes from Rossetti. Good Italian name there. Obedience is the fruit of faith. Patience, the bloom on that fruit. There's a lot of times we have to be real patient when things aren't working out or going our way. And a lot of times we tend to mess up when we start pushing things to get things done the way we think they should get done, instead of just having that patience and that faith that through God everything will be worked out. Today's short Bible lesson comes from Ben Gisselback over at plainsimplefaith.com, and this was posted on April 5th of this year. I don't remember my high school math, and I'm okay. I thought it was pretty good. I read through the article. I thought it was a pretty good article. He makes a lot of good points in there. The things that are important in life to remember, the things that, look, I'm still okay if I don't remember my high school algebra. I'm with Ben. And right now I kind of wish I had studied a little bit more on my English, but I'm catching up with some help from some friends on YouTube and VidMe. Got an English guy, a guy on there that teaches English, actually putting up videos on different things, how to pronounce these words, how to use these words in a sentence, things like that. And I'm eating them up. I love them because I need to continue my education, as it were. All right. I got to start off with this because this is the funniest story of the day, in my opinion. Antifa group pledges revolution against capitalism. This is by Ian Miles Chong over at the Daily Caller, and this was posted on Sunday, 7/30 of 2017. And this is why I'm laughing about this, folks. I'm going to put this picture up and let you look at this. An Antifa organization called Redneck Revolt is advocating for revolution against the rise of fascism in the United States and the end of capitalism. The fascists, to facilitate these goals, the group offers a variety of resources, including a training manual for conducting guerrilla warfare with sections for executions and terrorism. In the wake of the targeted shooting of Republican members of Congress earlier this year, nothing is more concerning than extremist organizations calling for armed revolts against civil society. Redneck Revolt is one of the several organizations that sprang up following Trump's victory in 2016 polls, and is purportedly one of the largest of these Antifa organizations currently operating in the United States, with over 30 chapters across 20 states. It describes itself as a group made up of working class and poor people, with declarations of taking meaningful action against our common enemy, the rich. It lists militant resistance as one of the group's guiding principles, and there's links to the article. If you just go to this article, it'll actually show you some of the pages out of their manual. Antifa members have been labeled anarchist extremists and listed among domestic terrorism groups by the Office of Homeland Security in New Jersey. Daily Caller Deputy Editor Scott Greer compared anti-fascist groups to terrorists in a Fox News appearance. Much of the group's official website includes rhetoric pulled straight out of Marxist publications, echoing various talking points often spouted by leftists about the evils of capitalism, property ownership, artificial borders, and basic systems of social order, including police, prisons, and courts. Redneck Revolt refers to these public institutions as systems of social control that only exist to serve the rich, and calls for the end of the nation-state project. It lists the U.S. Armed Forces alongside the KKK as having undermined the struggle for freedom among all people. And I want you to notice something in the picture of these redneck revolters, these Antifa rednecks, right? That they just want to be considered part of the common people. Okay, that they're. I'm laughing, folks. I'm really laughing. They have no clue, and don't have a clue what redneck means. Now, I looked up in the, and I love the Urban Dictionary. I looked up in the Urban Dictionary the term redneck. And I'm going to leave that picture running here for a little bit. You would be a redneck if you need one more hole punched in your car to get a freebie at the House of Tattoos. You'd be a redneck if you need an estimate from your barber before you get a haircut. You'd be a redneck if your wife weighs more than your refrigerator. That's a bad one. That's a really bad one. You'd be a redneck if you move your refrigerator and the grass underneath it is turned yellow. You might be a redneck. I'm going back to Jeff Foxworthy here. You might be a redneck if you mow your lawn and find a car. You might be a redneck if you spit without opening your mouth. You might be a redneck if going to the bathroom in the middle of the night involves putting on shoes and a jacket and grabbing a flashlight. And it goes on and on and on down through here. I love redneck jokes, I really do. But anyway, if you scroll down through there, they have a definition down there. Typically, rednecks live in rural settings. They avoid urban settings. They are proud of their pickup trucks and older cars and stick with them despite rising gas prices. They typically work industrial and manual labor jobs. The majority do not have anything beyond a high school education. They depend on good old boy system of advancement. They are extremely weary of those who do possess the desire to act educated. These people are perceived as sellouts. You can often see rednecks hauling lawn equipment or hunting dog equipment, even if they don't plan on using these items in the near future. It is a proud symbol of their social class. Rednecks often are seen about in hunting attire, even though they don't plan on hunting anything. Dressing up comprises of dockers and a tucked-in polo shirt, baseball hats, or on men. Baseball hats on men are a must regardless of the occasion and whether indoors or not. I totally agree with that, folks. Most rednecks do not live in mobile homes anymore. Most have modest homes. Typically, they decorate in Native American or hunting themes. Most devote much more money into their vehicles than their homes. Rednecks speak with a southern accent and avoid using big words. They may know big words, but it is not socially acceptable to use them. People who do not are identified as outsiders. Rednecks support major brands such as Coca-Cola and NASCAR. Their major pastime are watching television, hunting, fishing, and shooting. They detest reading other than romance novels or the newspaper. Rednecks tend to be socially conservative. They're extremely defensive against outsiders and anyone different from them. They have learned to avoid those who do not adopt their culture. Many rednecks may also be evangelical Christians. They will not hesitate upon meeting you to tell you that you are going to hell if you are not also Baptist or similar denomination. Now, I'm going to stop that there. That has not been my experience there. And some of these, like I said, some of these you got to take with a grain of salt, these definitions. But I just looked it up, and the link it'll be in the show notes page there for you on the Urban Dictionary. And so you've seen enough of them pictures. And you notice what they have around their neck. They have, I call them bandanas. I got a bunch of them in my drawer. Matter of fact, I have a couple red ones in my drawer, kind of faded, but they're red. And every now and then when I'm out working outside, I'll wet one down and wrap it around my neck because it keeps you cooler, when it's hot. And however, these folks are not rednecks. They absolutely are not. What they are, and this is the sad thing about it, and they don't even know it. They say that they're anti-fascist, but yet they use the same fascist ideology and examples of persuasion through violence as did all the fascists that ever lived. Mussolini, Hitler, anybody else that was a fascist or communist. You know, Joe Stalin, Mao in China, Pol Pot in Cambodia. They're using the same tactics because, and I titled the show today, and this is something that's kind of interesting to me, and this is actually coming out more and more and more in my research and just every day. Anti-freedom groups only have violence to advance their agenda. Their ideas have been rejected outright by a broad majority of Americans. So the only way that they can protect their ideas and advance their ideas is through threat of force, or actually using force, like out in Berkeley, or other areas where conservatives were to come to colleges and speak, and they were in Berkeley, they set the place on fire to prevent that from happening. They actually had riots out there. So these anti-fascists are mostly, they're not rednecks, folks. If you look again, let me bring this slideshow back up again. If you look again, these folks aren't poor. They have designer sunglasses on. Most of them have designer type jackets on. And they have these red bandanas. And this one picture here, Make Racists Afraid Again. 99% of the people in that picture are white. And these other pictures, they have AK-47s and they look like M15s. Those aren't cheap either. I'm not saying rednecks don't have weapons at all, but these people are not in a country setting. They're actually in an urban setting, actually in a city setting. Most of them are, I wouldn't say most of them, but there's a lot of them that are paid agitators, and they look. And this is the, folks. Let me let you in on a little thing here. This is a trick of the left. We talked about this yesterday. How anti-freedom groups should just lie to your face, and how. And I picked on net neutrality. Well, they talk about net neutrality, and they actually named it that way so it would seem harmless to folks. But what net neutrality actually is government control of the internet, and they don't see it because they've been brainwashed. And so, what I want to let you in on, the anti-fascist groups aren't really anti-fascist. They see that they're out of power, and the only way they're going to get in power or have their side heard in their minds, the only way they can have their opinions heard or their agenda heard, is if they use violence to force people to pay attention to them. They're using fascist, communist tactics. I mean, look at the Bolsheviks in the Bolshevik Revolution that gave us communist Russia. They're acting the same way. They're acting the same way. They're doing the same things. And honestly, I don't think these people even know anything about history, even generalized world history. They don't have a clue. So these Antifa groups are going around. I'm down with the man. I'm a redneck just like everybody else, and they're not. And I know maybe I'm reading more into this red scarf, but you know when you take a term and hijack the term redneck, you're going to get a lot of folks across this in all 50 states, and I submit to you that there are rednecks in all 50 states. A lot of people think the rednecks just live down south. Well, I'm telling you that I consider myself a redneck, and I don't live down south. I was down there for a couple of years in the military in South Carolina, but I don't live down south. And I submit to you there's rednecks all across this land, in all 50 states. Matter of fact, there's rednecks up in Canada, too. They're just a little more friendlier than we are down here. But when you hijack a term like that to try to make your group, and this is the only reason why they do this, they're trying to make their group look as harmless as possible when they actually aren't. These guys are talking about guerrilla warfare. They're talking about executions. They're talking about kidnapping. They're talking about extortion. I mean, out in Berkeley, that's a type of extortion, holding the college hostage until they get their way of not having like a conservative like Milo Yiannopoulos. He's a gay conservative. Come out there and speak to them because they don't agree with his ideas. And last time I checked, folks, if you didn't agree with a fascist's ideas, those fascists were going to put you down pretty quick, or try to, through violence. Because what they want is anti-freedom and anti-liberty. They don't want liberty by law. They want laws construed to control the masses. And folks, when you, I don't care if I get in trouble for this, I don't think I'll get in trouble for this. When you lie to folks to advance your agenda, and I'm talking about the lamestream media, I'm talking about the Democrats in this country, I'm talking about the anti-freedom progressive, the regressive progressives in this country like Bernie Sanders. When you lie to advance your agenda, that is committing violence on people. Because you're hiding your true nature. You're hiding your true intentions of what you want to do. And this leads me into my other story that we didn't get to yesterday. Is let me see if I can find it again. You know what? I forgot to bring that over. Let me bring that up because I did bring that over. Hang on a second. Why the left? Hang on a second. Why the left protects Islam. This is by Ben Shapiro, and it's over at Town Halls, published on the 26th. And you got to understand the anti-freedom. Now he uses why the left protects Islam. I'm going to tell you why the anti-freedom groups protect Islam. Like I said, I do not like that left-right paradigm anymore. Either you're for freedom and liberty for everybody and you want to protect it and promote it for everybody, or you're not. You know, there's no gray area. In my mind, there's no gray area here, folks. Either you want to allow people, and I hate the word allow, you want to protect and promote people's freedom and liberty, or you want to restrict them. It's that simple. We don't need to complicate things. As I've said before, let's redneck it up just a little bit here. Let's not complicate these things. Richard Dawkins is no friend to conservatives. The atheist author has spent much of his life deriding Judaism and Christianity. He once stated, an atheist is just somebody who feels about Yahweh the way any decent Christian feels about Thor or Baal or the golden calf. Dawkins says that even moderate religious people make the world safe for extremists. He's far to the left of politics. He's pro-abortion rights and supporter of the Labour Party and Liberal Democrats in Britain. But he's also smart enough to recognize that radical Islam is a greater threat to human life than Christianity or Judaism. He explains, I have criticized the appalling misogyny and homophobia of Islam. I have criticized the murdering of apostates for no crimes other than their disbelief. Muslims themselves are the prime victims of the oppressive cruelties of Islam. Such language makes him a pariah among leftists. This week, Dawkins was scheduled to speak at an event with KPFA Radio in Berkeley, California. All went swimmingly until leftists realized that Dawkins had said something untoward, some untoward things about Islam. The station then canceled the event, citing his abusive speech. It explained, we had booked this event based entirely on his excellent new book on science when we didn't know he had offended and hurt in his tweets and other comments on Islam so many people. KPFA does not endorse hurtful speech. Which, in other words, folks, they do not endorse free speech. Because you can't put adjectives on speech. It has to be free speech. Whatever it is. No matter how hateful it might get or hurtful it might be. It's still free speech. Okay? So they're against free speech. Oh, this is no shock. The same left that barred Dawkins from his Berkeley event cheered this week while Palestinian Arabs rioted over metal detectors at the Temple Mount. Those leftists proclaim that the true obstacle to peace in the Middle East isn't Palestinian Arab violence. It isn't Palestinians who stab Israeli Druze officers. on the Temple Mount, or the Palestinians who invade homes and slaughter old men and women, or the Palestinians in government who cheer, honor, and financially support such behavior. No, the problem is the Jews, according to everybody over there in the Middle East. The same left blames metal detectors for murderous assaults and Richard Dawkins for offending Islam, makes excuses for radical Muslim and Women's March on Washington organizer Linda Sauer, who has called for certain apostate Muslims to have their genitalias removed, says a Zionist cannot be feminist and stands up for terrorists and terror supporters. Why does the left or the anti-freedom groups out there support radical Islam so ardently? Because the left believes that the quickest way to destroy Western civilization is no longer class warfare, but multicultural warfare. Simply ally with groups that hate the prevailing system and work with them to take them down. Then the left or the anti-freedom folks will build on the ashes of the old system. In this view, Dawkins is an opponent. How can the left recruit Muslims to fight the system if Dawkins is so busy alienating them? They supported the Palestinian terror regime. How can the colonial outpost Israel be defeated without a little blood? They applaud Sauer. She's an ally, so she must be backed. Alliances with nefarious forces calls your own morality into question. KPFA has a lot more to answer for than Dawkins, but the left will never have to answer such questions so long as it focuses in on its common enemy, a supposedly conservative establishment that must be fought with any tool at its disposal. So this goes back, folks, to the reasoning why they support Antifa so much. Why the lamestream media, which is mostly anti-freedom, why they don't hold Antifa accountable, why they don't hold Islam accountable, is because they don't like Western civilization. Western civilization. Now think about this, folks. Think about, and I'm just looking up to see what my time is here. Western civilization is a rebuttal to the European model. Now, a lot of people call Europe a Western civilization, and I would have to disagree with that to a certain extent. That when the colonies broke off in America and established a new nation, brought forth in freedom and liberty, recognized the individual sovereign, and as a group they're sovereign over the government, recognize this basic fact, set up the government to support those facts, which they are facts, limited government, the whole 9 yards, America started the true Western civilization. True freedom and liberty was started here in America. Now, it had been talked about for 500 years before the establishment of America. And Chris Ann Hall does a good job going through this over at the Chris Ann Hall Show. She does a good job of going through these, the history, freedom and liberty history. But a lot of those things never came to fruition. They were always fought by the sovereigns, the heads of state, and the groups that support the heads of state. Some of it might be the Catholic Church, other of them was the Church of England, whatever these groups that were in power. It wasn't until the United States broke away and in just less than 100 years became the economic and superpower of the world. It literally left Britain, the mother country, in other words, left her in the dust. And how did that happen? How did that happen? Because freedom and liberty. Because freedom and liberty. And now we have this anti-freedom movement in the United States and elsewhere in the world that doesn't like individuals having the freedom and liberty. Because if individuals have freedom and liberty, then they can't have what they want. What they want is government control of everything. And if they're on the right side of things, they think they'll be taken care of in this new governance of the people. But history has shown itself. The Bolsheviks handed the communists handed them the victory in the Bolshevik Revolution and created communist Russia. And guess who Stalin went for first to either lock them up in gulags or kill them? The revolutionists. Because he didn't want them getting the idea that socialism and communism doesn't work and have another revolution on their hands. Go back and look in the history books, folks. They were done away with first. These people have a pie in the sky look on everything, outlook on everything. They look at things through rose-colored glasses that, if we just get our way and have government control everything, we're going to be able to actually move the levers of power too because we helped deliver this. It's not going to happen. Never has in history. I don't know why these elitists think it's going to happen now. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's a fact. That's a historical fact, folks. So it amazes me how these groups do this. It amazes me how the anti-freedom folks in the world, especially in America, want to bring down free market capitalism because they see it as the enemy of people. The problem is, and folks, I might get a little personal here, but the problem is with a lot of these Antifa and these anti-freedom folks is they're lazy. They don't want to go out and compete. And you can see that in their ideology. They don't want competition. They don't. They want the government to do everything. Net neutrality. They want the government to make sure that nobody has a monopoly other than the government. And they don't see folks like Russia. Putin just announced that they're going to get all apps and the computers and stuff like that are not going to be allowed to use virtual private networks anymore, which makes people invisible on the internet. China just did the same thing last week. And then we still have folks here in America that still want the government to control the internet. And like I said, they don't want to compete. Folks, we can see this. And this is the funny thing. We can actually see this with our children. My son was playing t-ball. And I asked what the score was one time. You thought I'd shot somebody, the reactions I got. And I tell you what, you ask any of the boys on the bench, I didn't ask any of the girls, but you ask any of the boys on the bench, and they'll tell you, they knew exactly what the score was. They were keeping score. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you got to know who the winners and losers are. And just because you lost a game doesn't mean you're a loser. And hopefully that should motivate you to go out and do better next time. Practice more as a team, as an individual, so you can get better and you can actually do more. But anti-freedom folks, they're too lazy to go out and compete for things. They want the government to pay for the school, especially for their higher education. They don't want to have to go out and work a second or like one or two jobs, during the school year and then all summer to save up money to pay for their tuition or their books and stuff like that. They want to go out and have a good time over summer break, or go out and party every evening. They don't want to have to work for their education. So they're in my mind, they're intellectually and physically lazy. They don't want to go out and do this. So if somebody like Bernie Sanders comes along and said, hey, free education, free college education for everybody, and sink in these in Politicon debates, he said the same thing. It's anti-freedom, folks. And I'll tell you why. When I was growing up, I didn't care how I treated my sneakers. I didn't care how I treated my bike, because I always figured if something happens to it, Mom and Dad will pay for another one. It wasn't until I had to start paying for my shoes, paying for my bicycles, or paying for my car. So I honestly, and hopefully my mom's not listening to this, I didn't care how I abused our Chevy station wagon. Not that I wrecked it or anything like that, but I got a little ornery with it. And it wasn't until I bought my own car and figured out burning out tires and stuff like that actually is money out of my pocket, because I'm going to have to replace them sooner, I quit that stuff. But when you get something for free, one, you want more of it, and two, you don't respect it because you didn't earn it. Just like these young kids on YouTube. They get all these hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars thrown at them in advertising costs because they put out a video on games and stuff like that. And I have nothing against that. You know, it's, to me, there's no redeeming social value in it, but there seems to be enough interest with young people. But they didn't do anything to earn it other than have a video, and they don't have any discipline. And there's kids today, and this is shocking to me, there's kids today that are saying that they want to be a YouTube star. They want to be on YouTube and be a YouTube star, and we see so many tragedies out there with these young folks that are trying to do that. So they want to tear down Western civilization because they see it as too hard. You got to work for everything. I got to get up to an alarm clock and go to work to a job I may not like because I didn't go out and get the skill sets that I needed to get a better job or get a job in something I want. I went to college and got my degree in women's studies. I can't find a job. I can't find a job. It must be society's fault. Can't be my fault. Must be society's fault. So, and you see, welfare started back in the 60s. Lyndon Baines Johnson's War on Poverty. You give all this free stuff away, guess what happened? What it actually cost outstripped the projections like by 4 times. 4 times the amount in a certain amount of years. I think it was like 10 or 12 years. Because if you give it away, you're going to have more people wanting it. And like I said, I think they're physically and intellectually lazy. And like I said, maybe I'm being a little too harsh there, but you know, for folks out there that have actually struggled and gone through their lives and worked for everything they have, it bothers me, and I know it bothers other folks, that there's these people out there with their hand out. You know, that I should have free education, that I should have this or I should have that given to me at somebody else's expense. Cash for clunkers. I know a lot of people that got caught up in that. Got rid of perfectly good vehicles that were destroyed and sold to China. Sold to their steel industry over in China. They had these new cars and they couldn't afford them. They got them real easy because they just took in their cash, their clunker. They traded in. The government was subsidizing the trade-in value, but they still couldn't afford the payments. I can't tell you how many people felt sorry that they did that. I didn't fall for that. I knew better. I looked at the payments on it. I'm like, I can't afford that payment, even with that high, you know, that high subsidized down payment. Wasn't worth it to me. I'd rather keep my old vehicle and put, you know, money into it, which I don't put a lot into because I keep it maintained. So there's a lot of things in our society that happen that just I shake my head at, folks. And this is the reason why they back. This is the reason why anti-freedom folks back Islam and back Antifa and Black Lives Matters and, you know, these other, what I call antisocial groups, because they want to take down Western civilization. They don't agree with the premise. They don't like people having freedom and liberty to do what they want as long as they're not aggressing against somebody else. And they don't want people out there making their way through life, pulling themselves up by the bootstrap and working every day for what they have, because that's a repudiation of their lives. Because in their minds, we can't make it without government. We can't make it without all these subsidies and all these government programs. And yet there's people in America today that have very little to do with government. Normal people, folks, normal middle-class Americans, poor Americans, rich Americans, that want very little to do with the federal government and are going out there every day and working their tails off to meet their wants, needs, and desires in life and taking the risks that are acceptable to them. That's a repudiation to the folks that want government to do everything for them. And they can't have that. They cannot have those examples out in America that repudiate what they're doing or what they stand for. It's no more complicated than that, folks. And so that's why they like these groups. And this is why people scratch their heads. Why in the world is these anti-freedom regressive progressives out there, like Islam, because I thought they were for the LGBTQ community. In Islam, they would much rather throw them off a roof building than to deal with them at all. And yet they support Islam and support the LGBTQ community at the same time. They support all this government spending and I got to get over to this real quick here. Um, Let me. Oh, this one here, and like I said, the links to the videos are all in here to the debate. And I think this is the best I watched. I couldn't watch all the other two because they got stupid. Ann Coulter and the lady from Young Turks, and then not Laura Southern, Tony Lauren and Handler. Had a debate, and they both got stupid. But this was a good one. On Sunday night, and this is by Hank Barron over at Daily Wire. Sunday night, the debate with Daily Wire editor-in-chief Ben Shapiro and the Young Turks host Cenk Uygur was held at Politicon in Pasadena, California. As much as Uygur tried to present the leftist vision he espoused, it was Shapiro triumphantly decimating argument after argument from Uygur, as Shapiro staunchly defended conservative principles in America, he was doing a lot. They covered politics, they covered economics. Cenk, he's a Keynesian economist who believes in government spending. You know, you didn't build that yourself. You had all these roads, you know, stuff like that. And at one time, the government took extra money out of the budget to pay for these roads, unconstitutionally, I might add, on the federal level, not the state level. But today, they take tax dollars out of every gallon of gasoline Americans buy. So we're paying for the roads. I'm paying for the roads. You're paying for the roads. Not the government's not paying for them. They're taking our tax dollars. As a matter of fact, even when the government was quote unquote paying for them, they still had to get the money from somewhere. They just didn't print it or get it out of thin air. They taxed the American people to do on the federal level something that was unconstitutional for them to do. And so it just went on, this whole 1 hour debate there. And I encourage you to go watch this, folks. It was entertaining to me, very insightful and enlightening. However, for all the Cenk's faults, and I'm not going to defend him because he was wrong on just about everything that he was talking about, economically, politically, the whole 9 yards. Ben Shapiro did a very good job at counteracting. However, and this is the one thing I have against Ben Shapiro, and I'm going to try to email him about it. I don't know if he reads all of his emails or not. They got into a discussion about how big a government do you want? Now, anti-freedom folks like Cenk, they want as big as government as possible. They want the government to do everything. Ben Shapiro, being a conservative, they want as small as government as you want. And they wrangled about, you know, Ben Shapiro wants these wars, we want education. You know, they went back and forth on this. This is what I have against Ben Shapiro. This is what I have against conservatives as a whole in the United States. They do not tout the constitutional size of government. If Ben Shapiro, and I want to rewatch this today, make sure I didn't miss it, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. Ben Shapiro did not mention that we should have the constitutional size government that we're supposed to have. If he would have said that, Cenk would have had no good argument to come back against that. Yes, Republicans and conservatives want smaller government, but they never tell you how small. And for whatever reason, they don't go back to the Constitution and say, hey, we have these enumerated powers on Congress, and this is how small we want the government. We don't want it any bigger than that. And that's a good starting point. I think if he'd have made that point during that debate, he'd have crushed it. He would have totally crushed it. He was crushing Cenk throughout the whole debate. Cenk looked like he was like a deer caught in the headlights with most of his arguments in this debate. He was very antagonistic against the audience, very condescending to the audience about their education. Go learn history, go get educated. You know, you need to learn this stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, I learned enough about Keynesian economics to know it's not something that we want to do. And he was espousing that without saying it. And this is where educating yourself comes in. You need to know economics plays a big role in everybody's lives, and you need to know the two major types of economics we're talking about. We're talking about Keynesian economics, and we're talking about Austrian economics. Keynesian economics talks about how the government is a player in spending everything, is the spender of last resort if the economy slows down, that the government should be spending all this money and it spurs the economy. And this was something that Sink actually made a comment about when he said, talked about Sink was advocating the recirculation of money. He was talking about if we give the money to the poor, and this is the big argument, they go out and they buy stuff, and that puts it back into the economy, and that's how economies grow. To a small extent, that's how the economies grow. But to a larger extent, the way economies actually grow is through savings and investments. So the corporations can have a pool of money that they can borrow to bring to market the things the people want to buy. That's how true economies grow. But what Sink was talking about with this recirculation of money is Keynesian economics, where you're talking about top-down. He was deriding this thing about supply-side economics, and called it trickle-down economics, which is an anti-freedom term. That Ronald Reagan was a supporter of supply-side economics because he understood Austrian economics. He understood where savings and investment grew the economy because it brought more things to the market where people could have more choices to buy things, and it brought competition in that. And again, anti-freedom folks don't want competition because then you have to work for it. You have to work for it. They'd rather have a government monopoly where they don't have to worry about competition. Again, the laziness factor comes in here, whether you're physically or intellectually lazy. That comes into the mix here. So I encourage you to go and actually, it's only an hour. It's very entertaining, and Ben Shapiro does a good job, but I think he'd have knocked it out of the park if he would have just talked about the constitutional size of government. A couple more articles you need to read that are over. They're going to be over on the DanClementShow.com show notes page after it. Alan West, how differently would senators act without the 17th Amendment? It's an article by Alan West over at CNSNews.com, and I've been advocating the repeal of the 17th Amendment. I think that would be great. Australia tampers with climate data, and this is by Chris White over at the Daily Caller. Australian weather keepers over there and data collectors for the climate have been caught fudging the numbers by some as much as 13 degrees in some reports. And that's very, very important. Yeah, the climate's falling apart. Yeah, through lies it's falling apart. People don't believe the New York Times or the Washington Post anymore. And this is a poll. They're talking about a poll, and this is an article by Grace Carr over at the Daily Caller. And there's a couple other ones I want you to go over and read. We're winding down the end of the show here, so we're going to have to wrap things up here. But remember, folks, freedom and liberty should be our goal in life. Freedom and liberty are actually the American dream, not possessions, not cars, not good jobs. It's freedom and liberty to decide what you want to do with your life the way you want to do it, as long as you're not aggressing on somebody else. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. And remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon, folks.